Welcome to the podcast series Growing Together. This episode will be hosted by Samantha Moore, where she and her close friend Shaini will share their personal experiences as visually impaired young women with regards to food and culture. Before starting, we would like to acknowledge that we are calling in today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. This podcast is brought to you by the Disabled Independent Gardeners Association. I hope you enjoy today's episode of Growing Together.
Your face, Shaini, it's hilarious.
Why?
You look so excited. You're like fangirling over the experience. It's
you know
amazing.
What it is? Because like for the last 2 years, it's been my laptop and my AirPods. So this is kind of nice.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
treating ourselves.
You know.
No AirPods over here, guys.
We're professionally doing a podcast
now. So that takes us into our recording. Welcome everyone to Growing With Us, a podcast where we are talking about food and disability and accessible gardening. Today we are going to be discussing culture, food and disability and how all of those things tie together. I'm Samantha Moore. Our lovely defined guest is Shaini. Would you like to, tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be back in my hometown in Ottawa. This is exciting. So I'm actually from Montreal, Quebec. I'm 31 years old and I am visually impaired. I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa when I was 21. And along this beautiful journey, I got to meet Samantha, who I call my soul sister. We're pretty much the opposite when it comes to our diagnosis, so we work really, really well together. She's great at the nighttime, and I'm great in the daytime, and we're okay with steps together.
It's fabulous teamwork, you guys. It's,
so I'm super excited to be here, and thank you so much for thinking of me and asking me to come on.
Of course. And I think I thought of you instantly because South Asian culture and Italian culture, although they're different, there's so many similarities. There's how you value family, and family really comes first, and the opinion of your family and like the older people in your family and how they influence future generations and how they pass down stories. That was one of the reasons that like when I thought of this episode and I was really looking at the theme, I was like, oh my God, this would be, Shaini and I would be perfect to have this conversation together, because I feel like we always talk about it on our own time, just naturally, about food and how that ties into our lives. So that sort of brings us to the first topic I wanted to discuss today, gender roles in food. And I think we're both women who love to cook, and I would love to hear about how you got into cooking, like how, especially around the time of your vision loss, like what did cooking start to look like for you?
So funny enough, I started with baking first. And now that I've done both, I'm like, cooking is so much easier. Baking is a science, so you can't really mess it up. But so I got diagnosed at 21 with RP. So telling my parents and explaining it to them that, like, I have trouble seeing at night. It's harder for me to function in the nighttime. They became, which makes sense, protective. And they were like, okay, so go to work, come home. Like, don't be out and about so much at night. And they came very protective, right? So I was home, had a lot of free time. And growing up, I used to use like Betty Crocker and like make little cupcakes with my mom and like, the amateur stuff there.
Yeah.
And you can only do that for so long that I'm just like, okay, I have time. Let me explore. So I YouTube stuff, and that's how I learned how to like bake and decorate and like try new recipes and just kind of challenge myself. I had nothing better to do, right? And this is when like Facebook was up and coming. So I literally posted on my personal page, and like people were like, oh, can you make me a cake? Oh, can you make a cake for this? And I'm like, really? You want me to make a cake? Like, and I was like, okay, sure. And I'll just do it for friends and family, right? And that from 2012 up until 2018 was a full-blown business. And I started baking, but no one knew till 2015 of February that I was visually impaired, except for like maybe like 2 or 3 friends and my parents, and that was about it.
Yeah, people closest to you.
Yeah, and especially because like I guess I didn't want people to think like, oh, it's a blind girl making my cake. I don't want her to make my, because a lot of people have this different stereotypical idea of what a visually impaired person was. Media shows that we wear our sunglasses all the time, we sit in a dark room, we don't know how to do anything, we don't know how to dress ourselves. So I wasn't even completely 100% confident in my own skin yet, so I didn't say anything. And also, coming from a South Asian background, people don't talk about disability. People don't talk about illness. People don't talk about depression. I was going through all that. And also, I'm a female. I was 21. That is prime age for getting married. And so at this point, I was getting marriage proposals all the time at home from people we didn't know, my parents didn't know. People just randomly call my parents. And that brings me to how people perceive women in our culture, and we're unfortunately raised, or like people look at us in a way that, okay, your job is pretty much going to be to serve to your husband and your kids, so cook, clean, all this. And so when people in our community started finding out about my disability when I opened up in 2015, let's just say the marriage proposals stopped, thank God. But that also came with a lot of people talking and me hearing through the grapevine, people saying like, well, if I had a son, I wouldn't want my son to be married to her, because who's going to take care of my son? My son's going to have to know how to do all this. But I'm sorry, he should know how to do it,
I was going
right?
to say, he should know how to,
he should know how to turn on the laundering
socks.
machine. He should know how to cook, and like,
Yeah.
But like, I love to cook and I love to bake, but I don't want to be put in that position where that's my only sole job, and there's so much pressure. And like, I had surgeries last year, and like, I couldn't do anything. And so like, what if I was married to someone, like, we just wouldn't have eaten? You would have just ordered out, like, you know what I mean? There's certain things like that, and there was a lot of pressure where people just, in the South Asian, and I think in the Italian culture too, like, the woman just has to do everything for the husband. And especially when it comes to food, like, when they come home, food should be on the table, and like, you can have a job, but it's expected that you're supposed to take care of the man.
Yeah. And even one thing I remember hearing from my mom, very young actually, like I don't even know if I was a teenager yet, but the idea that the woman in the couple is sort of needs to keep track of how much her husband is drinking. When you go out, it's like, oh, you know, sweetie, you've had enough, or it's your responsibility to take care of him. And I remember my mom saying, like, there's none of that in this household. Like, your dad he keeps track of himself. That is not my job. He is a grown man. That's not my responsibility. And I know my mom grew up very old school and very different to how I grew up. Like, I grew up more as like a second generation almost, which I think I am, because I'm the first one born here. But my mom came here so young that she really grew up here and was really immersed in North American Canadian culture. And so I love that she sort of almost went the other way and became this very liberal parent and was like, yes, challenge those norms. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to just have to be responsible for somebody else purely because you're the girl. Like, I'm raising you independently. You should be with someone
that adds,
exactly,
right? Yeah,
that
exactly.
adds to that independence. And I also love how disability can kind of challenge gender roles too, like from like a male or female perspective, or even a non-binary perspective. Like, disability really, if you're not ready for it, it can be a lot to tackle, right? If you like your gender roles in society and you're comfortable with those, it can kind of turn your world upside down. But if you're someone who likes to tackle those things, it can kind of push that a little bit. And I kind of like that.
Yeah. No, it definitely opens up your eyes, no pun intended. I don't know why I always do this, guys. I'm sorry. But just like, it really, for me, having this disability, being diagnosed, really pushed me to my limit, because I had felt like in the beginning, it was more of a shield to like hide the fact that I was blind. If anyone even had any inkling, I was like, oh, well, if I'm making cakes and I'm dancing and I'm doing that, there's no way they would think I was blind.
Yeah, the overcompensation.
But now it's like, no, I'm doing it to show people, to bring awareness that we're not just sitting in a dark room. We're not just at home not being able to do anything. There is more to us. There's more to our community. Our community is so strong. It's unbelievable.
It's insane. When I meet people that are doing things in our community, I'm like, wow, you're a lawyer. I'm a potato, so that's cool. It's insane to see what some people are doing. And people are like, oh, so you're blind? You just like, I was having lunch with an old friend from college recently, And I love him to death. He's such a sweetheart. And I kind of reminded him because he said something and I was like, oh, I don't think he remembers that I have low vision. And so I said something. He was like, wait, but then how did you, how did you hike Eagle's Nest? Because I had posted a picture on social media recently of like me at the top of the Eagle's Nest peak or whatever. And I was like,
with my feet?
Yeah. Like, how do you? No, I levitated. Like I didn't know how to answer. I was kind of stumped because I haven't answered any of those questions in a while.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to see what people.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we're able to do everyday things. It just, we have a different way of doing it. Like, I can go down the steps. It just takes me longer. I can do my makeup. It just takes me longer. We have our own ways of doing stuff. Like, same thing with making a cake and decorating it. I can do it. Just going to take me longer than a normal cake decorator, right? So just like, I think people just assume we just don't do anything.
Yeah. Or I think also they hate on you for taking longer. And I think some people can do it faster or as quickly as an abled or sighted person. It's just that also takes time. So if you're constantly adjusting to like new vision, a new range of vision all the time, or you're losing it or gaining and losing, like you're in this up and down sort of adventure, that takes you a while. You're constantly adjusting to a new starting point, right? So I think people need to remember like everyone's different. Everyone's got a different pace.
Yeah.
I do want to move on to the next section because this is actually, I'm very excited for this. Stories.
Oh my God.
Family stories around food or like stories that were passed down, even like, and you speak a different language at home, right? Sometimes. And like, I do not. My nonna does, and my mom kind of does. And, some people in my household do, but not my direct household with my mom and dad. So I find how stories get passed down fascinating because sometimes there's the translation involved too. So I'm curious to know what kind of stories you have that stick out in your memory, either experiences or stories that were passed to you about food.
I guess it's more of an experience. So I'm South Asian. I'm Sri Lankan Tamil. So at home we speak Tamil. My parents are from Sri Lanka. My grandparents were pretty much there. So in our culture, there's no such thing as a recipe book or any sort, right? And growing up, like, I would always, like, be like, not growing up, but maybe when I was, like, in my early 20s, I was like, Mom, like, can you teach me? Because they always complain, like, oh, you don't cook. How are you going to do this? Blah, blah, blah. And then you get in the kitchen, and I'm like, okay, teach me. And they don't have, like, a recipe to follow. And it's like kind of hard, especially when you're like visually impaired, where she's like, yeah, just throw a little bit of that. I'm like, what's a little bit? Like what did you, like, if you totally missed it, like you had no idea. But at the same time, like, and I used to be like, Mom, you need to have recipes. You need to write it down. I need to know, like, how can you not know? And I used to get mad at her all the time. She goes, this is how my mom taught me. This is how I learned. This is how you're going to learn. It obviously did not work. Now I live alone and obviously I'm cooking and all that stuff. And obviously in the beginning, like you look at a recipe and I'm like, okay, I'm following it. And then you like, after you tried it for the first time, you go, okay, next time I'm going to tweak this. Maybe I'll add this. It'll taste better. So like now I've become my mom. Last time I made something, someone's like, do you have the recipe? I'm like, oh, I hate that I'm going to say this, but like I do, but not really. Like I have like a base, but then like as I'm cooking, I'll throw in like a different spice and then I won't know how much I put because like I'm tasting as I'm going or like, and that's the thing with like when you're baking, you have to have the recipe done because you pour the batter, you put it in the oven. You can't fix as you're going. And you don't want to really eat the batter. You can't really taste how it's going to be when it's baked, right? Yeah. Cooking, you can like taste as you go along. So that's why I find a little bit more relaxed when I'm cooking because I feel like if I like feel like there's not enough spice, I can go in and add it. As opposed to a cake, if I put a tablespoon instead of a teaspoon, that's going to really change up your recipe.
And you don't know until it's too late.
That's what I'm saying. So that's why like I think maybe I was bold to try baking when I found out I was going blind, but honestly, it was a lot to learn from. But yeah, so talking about like stories, so that was one that I always used to be like, Mom, like I need to know, and she'll be like, no, back home it was so easy. But like for them, like also taste is very different because everything was homegrown. Like everything was in their backyard. The milk was in their backyard. The chickens were in their backyard. And people used to come to their doorstep and sell vegetables. And like everything was so fresh that like they didn't really need a lot of added flavor because there was already that natural refreshing taste.
Yeah.
And then you come here and it's like totally different, right? And especially for my mom, like also another thing, like being South Asian, there were so many things that I didn't think I ate growing up. Like Brussels sprouts. Like I remember in high school or like elementary, people were like, oh, I hate Brussels sprouts. I'm like, oh, I don't know what that is. I don't think I've ever had Brussels sprouts. Like genuinely, I never thought I had it because we have a lot of curries and a lot of rice and stuff like that, right? So then like, I think one day like I had bought it, whatever. And I was like, oh, mom, like have you ever tried Brussels sprouts? Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to try it. She goes, what do you mean? Have we ever tried Brussels sprouts? I'm like, we never had this growing up. She goes, she's like, when we first came to Canada, like we didn't have like Indian, South Asian stores. So she's like, I had to get creative. And I'm like, so what do you mean? What did you do? She goes, I made curry out of Brussels sprouts. I'm like, okay. And she's like, yeah, like I didn't have access to all the South Asian Tamil like vegetables. So I got creative. So I would go into like a grocery store and whatever I can get. She goes, I would use the same curry base. I would just throw in a different vegetable. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So I lied my entire childhood. I did have Brussels sprouts.
That's
but yeah,
amazing.
But I think your Nona has some crazy stories.
Oh, she has so many. I'm pretty sure they all involve a donkey, and a carriage, and there's so many. There's so many. I have two favorite stories.
Okay.
That my nonna always used to tell me, and one, my personal favorite, the Mussolini stole my pot story. It's a great story.
Should trademark that story.
I should, honestly. It should be a children's book.
Yeah.
It should be like
with
a
the cartoon
story.
of like, you know.
Oh my God, yeah. That's it. I feel like that would be a little newspaper
Yeah.
cartoon. But anyway,
Yeah.
so during the war apparently, and I actually don't think this was my nonna. I think it was actually her mom that this happened to. But during the war, the military would actually go around and collect copper or materials from different people's households that they could melt down and use for weaponry because they needed resources and stuff to use. And they came to my nonna's house and they had one really beautiful copper pot and they used it for so many things. It was, I think, her favorite pasta pot or favorite pot to cook in. And they took it so that it could be melted down to make some kind of weapon or a machine gun or something. Like, I have no idea. And it's just so funny because, like, comparing like lives, I would never encounter something like that.
Like, no one's gonna walk into our house and steal our pot.
Yeah, Trudeau isn't gonna knock on my door and be like, "Hey Sam, you know what I really need from you to service your country? I really need your frying pan."
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just not gonna happen to me. So yeah, I think the last point I really wanted to talk about was like disability and cooking. So we kind of talked about perception, which I think is so important because definitely people think we just sort of like sit
Uber
on our butts and,
all the time. And
yeah.
I would love to have like a chef who would just come cook for me if that's what people think my life is like, right?
Yeah,
like
that'd be great.
I'd have like, you know, everyone doing stuff for me because apparently blind people, we don't do anything. So like it'd be great if that was the reality, that we had a butler and we had a chef who just did everything for us. But no, I would love that. If anyone wants to come cook for us, let us know.
Hit us
But
up.
like, truth be honest, like we just figure it out. Like I work off of memory. So my kitchen has a home for everything. There's a knife set there and I know which knife is on which level. I know how it feels. And in my drawer, I have a specific spot for like my baking utensils, all my wooden spoons. And like you feel a lot of the times you're feeling, even when you're washing the dishes, you feel to make sure you removed all the crap like off the stuff. So that's how I function. Luckily I use this one pot on the stove that I can use for like everything almost, which is nice. I don't have too many pots and clutter. Clutter is one thing I can't deal with. I don't know if you feel the same way because of my visual impairment. Like I need like,
especially in a kitchen.
Exactly. Like we're not really using our eyes when we're doing a lot of stuff. It's actually off of memory. So like if it's clutter, that's like me going through a lot of stuff and you'll hear me huffing and puffing, like especially when you're looking for Tupperware.
Oh my God.
That's the worst. Okay, like you're literally feeling, and like sometimes Tupperwares feel the same and the lid feels different. You're like just trying to figure out one that works. Yeah. But like you make it work, you know. Cooking in the daytime is a lot easier for me because it's a lot brighter. Nighttime, if the lighting's not that great, I'm not really in the kitchen much. But yeah, it just you find ways. Like pouring a glass of water, you put your finger on the side of the cup and you wait till you feel it on your hand. You're like, okay, that's enough like water so you don't spill it, you know? You find tricks, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Like, no, especially like you moved into a new place and now it's like relearning where everything goes, right?
And I think what I like about my new place is I have a window, but it's not super bright.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, what I always struggle with when I go to other people's houses is that kitchens are sort of the center of people's homes, right? Especially with now everything is open concept. Your kitchen, your living room, your dining room are all kind of in this big space with these huge windows, and everybody is just like all the lights. So when
That's me.
it's insane. And I'm just the opposite. So like when I go to people's houses, and this is kind of a, like how I was raised is like when you go to somebody's house, you offer to help in the kitchen.
Yes,
especially if it's a significant other.
Yes.
And I think that's just something I probably won't. I don't do it in my own house. But when I go to other people's houses, I always offer. But what I find hard is after dinner when, you know, you're cleaning up and you're putting things away, or even before dinner when everything is so bright. I want to help, but sometimes I'm self-conscious about helping because
100%.
I don't know if I'll break something. I don't know your kitchen. I know how my kitchen feels. I don't know how your kitchen feels. And so you want to be that like really nice guest that helps out, but you're also like, where does this go? Am I gonna break something? Like it's also it's something I don't even want to call it an insecurity because I think it's I just don't want to break their stuff.
I know, 100%.
You know?
It's funny because like I went to a chalet with family last week and I was like, I literally, every time I go to like a dinner party or anything, I always make sure I make something ahead of time. So I'm like, because this is my kitchen, I can do it. Because I know, like you said, when you're in someone else's kitchen, you don't want to like make it dirty. You don't want to spill something. You don't want to break something because we're not really used to the place, right?
Exactly.
And the sizing of the cups, the measuring cups and all that stuff. So like I'm always comfortable cooking in my own kitchen. So like I'll always do it things ahead. So at the chalet, I was like, I made stuff ahead of time, whatever. And then I was like, while you guys clean, I'll just take care of all the kids. Because that I can do. So I was like, so I don't break anything in the kitchen. And also it was a chalet and it was like the lighting was a little dim. So I was like, I don't really know where anything goes really. So like, that's the thing. Like sometimes I don't want to come off as like the lazy, rude girl who's not doing anything. But also at the same time, I don't want to break something or like
and
ruin something in your house.
Yeah.
But I think like all my close friends now understand that, right? But it's like, I feel like I always think about like the future, like when I meet my person and like meet his parents and like I'm someone who always wants to help. Always. I'm always like, I love cooking. But like you said, I think I'm going to be, especially if you're meeting your in-laws for the first time, I think I'm going to be super insecure. And it's coming from a South Asian community. I feel like they're going to be like, can she cook? Can she clean? Is she a good, like, you know, like a good wife?
And if you don't do it to the way they want, they're
gonna,
like,
and it's like, but I can do it, you know? But just in my own home, in my own space. Like I'm very comfortable doing that. But like, I guess that's something I guess I am insecure about now, and especially when that situation does arise, like for sure I'm gonna be super nervous. So maybe I'll just tell them to come over to my house and I'll just cook. So maybe I'll make it that way, because then when it's in your own space, you're kind of in control, right? So it's kind of like, but then I don't know, like culturally they'd probably be like, no, you're supposed to come to our house, but we'll deal with that when that comes. But like I totally get it, like feeling insecure / uncomfortable, like hesitant.
Yeah, and I think once you've been in a house for like 10 years or you've known that person for a long time, I don't think people realize how long it takes to get comfortable in somebody else's space, especially when you're not there every week or not there every like month or on a frequent basis. Like it's really hard to navigate somebody else's I think a kitchen is a very intimate space.
Oh yeah, personally. Especially for us, because we have our specific places that things go, and like even like I live with my sister, and like sometimes I'll go and I'm like, where is my spoon that goes here? She goes, oh no, I accidentally put it on the top one. I'm like, it's fine, I'll just move it. Like, you know what I mean? Because I have like specific, because I don't, since our vision's not the best, I don't want to look, if that makes any sense, right? Yeah. And so like knowing it's there, I just have to place my hand and I'm like, oh, okay, it's there. Yeah. It makes life easier.
Which is also interesting because sometimes you don't need to look. It's weird when you're
it's like when you put your seatbelt on. I don't need to look.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
But sometimes with the low vision range, it's like you have this weird habit of not looking, but sometimes looking. And sometimes to learn to do something, you have to not look and not use the vision you have to learn to do it in a safe way. But then it's also really hard to do that because you constantly have this temptation of like, oh, you can kind of see it, but you know, things like lighting a match or cutting something. I don't want to do that 2 inches from my face.
No.
So you have to learn to do it through feel, which I think a lot of people do. It's just, it's different.
It's like makeup. Like I grew up doing it, looking in the mirror, and now I'm just like, I just sit on my bed sometimes and I'm like, no mirror. I don't really need a mirror. I can't really see much, right? So I'm just like, okay, I'll just do it. Like, but then you realize you don't necessarily need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But you learn, you adapt, you find out what you don't need to. Obviously, making a cake, I need to look. But like certain things like boiling pasta or like, you know, baking toast, I know the toaster's on the right hand side of my counter. Like I know the setting's already set there. You know what I mean? So like you make way, you find a way to do it. We feed ourselves, we're healthy, we're full. So I can't complain. To be honest, I really can't. When I'm in my space, I can cook and clean, and like food makes me happy. I travel to eat. I wake up to eat.
I love to eat.
Yeah, like honestly, like during COVID, food is what, like cooking and learning new recipes. My grocery bill was extremely high during COVID because I was getting very experimental. But that's what made me excited.
Yeah.
Right.
And you had the time, right?
I had the time.
Home.
Exactly. Working from home. Like I can take out the chicken to defrost during lunchtime. And like,
I think everyone did that. I've actually heard a lot. I thought it was kind of just me, but it makes sense because you're home. So why pack a lunch?
Yeah.
You make your own food fresh
every
day. It's warm. I was making like stir fries and spicy shrimp pasta, like all of these different things.
I would make like a quick taco. Like tacos are super easy. Just having a warm taco sometimes and then sitting outside in your backyard during lunch. It was just nice to be able to enjoy like, and it was like you're eating healthier too, because like I know if I was in the office during the summer, we're all like, okay, let's go get go to the food truck during lunchtime, and like you're spending money, you're eating unhealthy, and like having food just restrictions, you're not really obeying them. So this way I was able to like really drill down on like eating healthy, making sure I was eating like things that are good for me and like incorporating them into meals. So definitely my relationship with food has gone a lot better during COVID. And I hope it continues that way, even going into the office. But we'll see. I hope to keep it that way. So we'll see.
Me too. I'm definitely kind of the same. I really have enjoyed watching my relationship with food grow and become even healthier because you have the time to experiment. Yeah. And I recently moved to Ottawa from Toronto, from the GTA, and I was on my own there. And I had a little bit of room for experimenting, but also without COVID, like I was kind of traveling more and I was working so much that it's hard sometimes to cook for yourself. So now being in a new city where I really am like very much on my own and having the time, I am cooking really great meals for myself and growing that way. And it's so funny because I try to ask back to like recipes and early childhood stuff. I used to bake. Well, not even bake, I guess, cook with my nonna, and we would like knead dough, or, you know, we would make biscotti, like the little Italian cookies, or pasta even. I remember we had that little pasta grinder thing. I don't know what the heck they're called. I could not tell
pasta maker, pasta roller.
Those,
yeah. I know, I have the, like, they have the attachments to the KitchenAid nowadays. Yeah.
So great. And now they make them out of, like, really cheap materials. Like, I've looked at a couple, and they don't make, my nonna had this, like, solid one, and I'm pretty sure she, like, bolted it down to her wooden countertop so that it wouldn't move. And it's really kind of a lost art. Like, it's not something that people do now, but it was such a fun tactile thing that I could do with her. And I really...
It's a lot of, like, touch and feel. Yeah. So it's, like, it's great.
Yeah. And she said, like, or my mom, I was kind of talking about it with her a while ago. She said one of the reasons that's a really great way to cook for you and why I probably liked it was that there's no time limit. It's not, you know, you need to play with the dough for half an hour or for 5 minutes or for whatever, because you go by how it feels. And one day, depending on the temperature, humidity, like what season it is, you may need to do that for an hour or you may need to do it for 20 minutes. Like, you don't know. So I think working on those things with her really brought like a closeness to her. Like her and I don't, like, you know, her English is okay and my Italian is obviously not great. Yeah. Even I can't even handle the dialect, never mind proper Italian. but we have these experiences and these stories that we can kind of share. So I don't know. I think food
And
is
also, like,
beautiful.
you know how those moments made you feel,
Exactly.
right? So, like, for sure, like, I know, like, growing up, baking is such a huge thing for me because my mom in our culture, it was like, when it's your birthday, you have to bring a sweet treat to your classmates because it's your birthday. You want to celebrate it with your close friends. So every year for my birthday, my mom would get me in the kitchen and we would bake something together. Either it was cakes or like cupcakes or cookies or something. So that was always instilled in my brain. So I've been baking, and that's like a beautiful memory that I have with my mom.
Yeah.
And so I know when I grow up, like when I have kids, and I know how that memory makes me feel and how happy it makes me feel, that I know definitely with my kids, I will be doing those. And that's something that they'll look back at also too. Like, oh, when I was younger, my mom used to do this with me. And like,
Yeah.
we do it, right? So like,
Yeah.
those are memories and I feel like memories with food, even when you're traveling, like I always go, oh, this place, the food was so good. Like food brings people together, brings memories together. And I think it's a beautiful, delicious thing. I just think like, even like when you go on a first date, like you're eating most of the time, right? Like I just like feel like food is present during so many memories.
Yeah. Food and love, man.
Yeah.
Food and love. They go together.
I know. I love it. But yeah, like honestly, regardless of being able-bodied or disabled, we find our way. We all gotta eat. So
Yeah. Like I think, okay, actually this made me think of something that came up during COVID, and I hate to say this, but this survival of the fittest mentality that really hit in the first few months of COVID when people were like rushing to grocery stores
to get toilet paper.
Yeah.
But like,
and to super stock up on like canned food and stuff like that. And how, as someone with a disability, it's harder to kind of do those. You don't have a car. You can't drive.
You can't
and, like,
run and like go from one store to another because another store didn't have something.
Yeah, or like stock up because you have to typically carry at home. So whatever groceries you're getting, it's what you can carry that day.
Yeah.
So like sometimes will walk home from the grocery store with 2 like giant bags on each arm. But also, how do you do that with a white cane? Like, you know?
Exactly. And it's like also like having all that, like me, like if there's steps, how are we gonna maneuver that?
Yeah.
You know, but that's the one thing that was nice with COVID, that like online shopping for groceries became more accessible. And I didn't mind paying that $7 like processing fee. Like, yeah, I like touching and like picking my vegetables and like knowing, but for the most part they were okay. But also it was nice, especially while I was experimenting with all these recipes. I didn't have to go through the aisles and look and try to find something. I literally searched it on the app and I was able to figure out like which one I wanted. So like even now, like those things that I bought, I don't know where it is in the store, but on the app,
you know where it is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and on an accessibility side, it was really nice, but I did miss like grocery shopping. But then when like you were able to go into the grocery store, it was a bit easier. It was hard because my grocery store did not look the same anymore because there's arrows on the ground that with no peripheral vision I don't see. Like, you know what I mean?
Even with a mask and glasses.
Yeah,
like,
that's something I struggle with. Like, I can't go into a store by myself, and especially in the winter, it was impossible. My sister and I would go grocery shopping together, and I would literally keep my hand onto the cart and like feel how she's guiding because my glasses would be so fogged up, and like God forbid it clears up, I speak and it gets foggy again.
Yep.
And it was a struggle. And then like grocery stores, like there was arrows. I had to go a specific way, and like it was just hard. And I feel like with the mask, my peripheral vision felt worse, if that makes any sense. But
yeah, no, me too. Me too.
So that was a struggle, but I'm glad that more grocery stores are doing like online delivery service because I felt that experience was nice, especially when I'm shopping for ingredients I've never shopped before, to be able to just get them on the app and like get delivered to me.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
I agree. But I think what's unfortunate about it, as beautiful of a service that it is, unfortunately some people can't afford it. And
that's the thing.
Right? So it's like, yeah, you and I are great because we work and we, have other people in our lives who can take care of us if we really need it, and we have the app. But I think some people can't, especially students. I know when I was a student, like it was kind of tough. Like you really have to like
you weren't
pinch.
able to get all like the healthier stuff, right? Like,
Exactly.
because when you go grocery shopping now, if I were to buy junk food, it's a lot cheaper than me buying my healthy
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and especially when you're going through a degenerative eye disease, you want to be healthy,
Yeah.
right? But if you're a student, it's not that easy, right? So like having accessibility to like, I think that's why like local places are super sweet. In the summer, like going into like farmers market and stuff is super nice because like you also get that like hometown vibe. Like everyone's
Yeah.
super nice. They're like, oh sweetie, how can I help you? And like you just feel like it's a personalized experience,
Yes.
right? And it's like, and if they see you with the white cane or whatnot, they're more likely to like be one-on-one. It's not a corporate life.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's really in my opinion, the most accessible experience. The most accessible experience is a personalized experience.
Yes.
Accessibility is not a huge blanket that just you can lay on top of it and fix it for
Yeah.
everybody. And I think what frustrates me, as great as these apps are for grocery shopping, what's frustrating is that it took pure laziness for the abled community to get something that was accessible for the blind and low vision or other people with other disabilities, maybe who also can't drive or have other challenges when they're grocery shopping. And it costs more, but it's a need for people. Like, you know what I mean?
It was also created because these businesses didn't want to lose money.
Yeah.
But it wasn't created when we needed it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, it wasn't created when all of us in our community, the disabled community, was like, oh, like this would be great. But it was like, didn't happen, but only happened because they're like, oh, people can't come into the store. So let's create something so we can still have revenue coming in.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's a business. I get it. But like, we're a huge community. The disabled community is huge.
Yeah.
And we still pay for groceries. We still need to function. We will generate revenue, but it's like they didn't see the need for it till they needed it.
Exactly. And it to them, it's a convenience. Like when because some of the apps were around before.
Yeah.
And I know when COVID started, you couldn't get onto the app because it was so busy.
Yeah. And like the delivery would be like a week later.
Yeah, because people were afraid to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I physically can't.
Yeah.
So if you could get off of the app, please.
Yeah.
Like, it was just so, and I think that's the problem with a lot of accessible stuff is it's brought in when the abled body community is ready for it and when they want to hear about it.
When it's convenient for them.
Exactly. It's not when we want it or when we ask for it. It's like, well, why do you need this? Or you're just not trying hard enough, or you're not, it's something is wrong with you, and it's a you problem, not a societal problem or a systemic problem that needs to be fixed. So as much as I'm grateful for these things, they're also still for people who are financially privileged or at least financially stable enough to be able to be like, okay, maybe I won't go out as much this month. I'll, tighten up my budget elsewhere so that I can have this accessible convenience of having my groceries and my food delivered to me.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's like everyday necessity. And it's like, you have to pick and choose if you can get the grocery you want.
Exactly. And what I love, like some of the other episodes on this podcast are going to be talking about or have talked about accessible gardening and how the benefits of having food either in your community or in like a communal space or in your backyard or having a small little micro garden on your balcony.
My parents get so much joy during the summer. Like my dad, like as soon as it's like warm enough, he's back there. Like he like built all these little like little things, and he put like cages so the squirrels don't come attack his vegetables, because like the squirrels in Montreal are pretty vicious. And like he has like every day we get like pictures in our like family group chat saying like my vegetables today, like it's like cucumbers, tomatoes, zucchini, like peppers, everything. And like he's so happy to like give it to my mom, like, oh, like look, you can cook with this, and like it's fresh, it's healthy, and
it's
like
rewarding. It's good for your
him.
mental
It's like
health too.
I did it, like, and it's his baby. I think since his two daughters are moved out now, he's like, this is what I'm gonna do, and it's like. It's so much joy, and like I think my mom too gets like happy cooking something her husband grew, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think knowing that there's accessible ways to start gardening and to be able to take control of the food that we want to grow and have is amazing.
Yeah.
So like I think that I wish we had more warmer months like in Canada that we can keep doing it longer, but I guess luckily for like being able to like store stuff and like freeze stuff, it's great. But like, yeah. So no, honestly, I think having accessibility in every sector of our life is so important. But it's just sad to hear that when it comes to food, not everyone has the equal accessibility, right?
Exactly.
So.
This actually made me think of a really cool talking point. There is an island in, oh gosh, I can't remember which ocean. I believe it's just off of the coast of Japan. It's between like Asia and Hawaii. It's in the middle of the ocean, and it's called Pingalap. And it is also commonly referred to as the Island of the Colorblind, which is a book that was written, I believe, in the 90s. And it was the one book that my mom probably had as a resource to refer to when I was diagnosed with vision loss. And half of it is about science and research that took place on the island. And then the other half is about the people that live on the island. And the majority of them actually happen to live with my specific condition.
Interesting.
So it's my specific type of cone dystrophy, which is achromatopsia.
And yours is quite rare too, no?
It is.
Okay.
So it's really interesting because a lot of people refer to the color. Side note, this is something that really bothers me about a lot of papers and research on my vision. They always talk about the lack of color as like the main issue.
Main struggle?
Yeah, but really it's the light sensitivity.
Yeah.
It prevents you, the day blindness. It prevents you from going out in the day, like the daytime. It's painful. There isn't a whole lot you can do for it. It really changes your vision from like, you know, in a situation you can go from having your 10% to nothing, right? Just because the sun decided to move out from behind some clouds. So anyway, but this island, these people all have this condition, and they're very like, you know, it's not a super, you can go into other islands and other cities to get more resources and food and stuff, but a lot of them do their own hunting and fishing. And I found out that they fish at night because it's easier for them to see and navigate at nighttime. And I think that's so, I mean, I know obviously, you know, they're not a super privileged country, and I think they struggle a lot for other resources. Not a lot of people even live on that island because there's just no jobs or anything
they probably
like that.
migrated somewhere else.
Yeah. But to me, to like hear that as a blind low vision person with that condition it was so empowering. I was like, so like there's a reason this gene still exists in this day and age, and it's because I was able to survive, or my ancestors were able to survive by making adaptations and hunting at night to make it work. You were still able to access food. And it's so funny because people think we sit around and do nothing, and there's this like survival of the fittest mentality. Like if you can't keep up, you will be phased out. But I find it so powerful to feel like actually I may even beat you.
But that's the thing. I feel like our disabled community, we become so much stronger because we go above and beyond to find ways to make things work for us, right? Like we're problem solvers. And as I always say whenever you go into an interview, that is your strength. Yeah. Because we've been problem solving from the day we got diagnosed. Yeah. To figure out how to function on a daily basis, every day we come across something that we don't know. Like that especially when you're like cooking or doing a new recipe or doing a new technique, we're not like people just have to figure out how just to do that technique. We have to figure out how to do that technique, but make it work visually and safely so we don't kill ourselves in the kitchen.
Yeah, and we have to figure that out.
No one else will know but us how that works, right? Exactly. So I think that's a beautiful trait, and I think that helps us build a lot of character.
Yeah, because when you're younger, a lot of adults kind of turn, especially from an academic standpoint or just a life standpoint in general, they look to you and you don't know what those answers are. When you're 5 or 6, you're like, I don't know. But in having to solve those on your own and really raise yourself, you have a different level of maturity and problem solving skills.
And life experience that I always say, like, I say it now, back then I would have probably never said it, but I'm kind of grateful that I have this diagnosis because it gave me a backbone that I don't think I would have discovered otherwise. Yeah. Experiences, opportunities. I used to hate public speaking. Now I do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's things that like you push yourself to do things. I never thought I would get into a business of making cakes ever. Yeah. Right. And like you find things that work for you and you tap into those things and you grow. And like, honestly, I feel that's why I always say like our community is so strong because we had to build up to be that strong and find ways and just keep thriving and finding ways to like show the rest of the world that our community is not to dismiss us, because there's a lot of power in our community. And I think it starts from home and it keeps growing as we get older.
Well, yeah, this was really fun.
I know. I feel like we keep going on for hours.
I know.
Because it's food. I could talk about food for hours.
I love food. It's making me hungry.
I know. I could eat like the world right now.
I feel like we're just gonna like shut down the podcast and then go for lunch.
And just eat.
Order everything. That being said, I think we should end it with food. And thank you everybody for coming today. I hope you guys all really enjoyed.
I hope
this
we didn't
podcast.
make you guys too hungry.
I know. I feel like there's gonna be people listening to this.
Like if you're listening to this like in bed, about to go to bed, we're very sorry.
I don't know if people have to go make themselves a veal sandwich or something.
I know, with some prosciutto on a French baguette. See, guys, food is the way to my heart.
Get some cheese, get a good charcuterie board going. Yeah. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. And that is Sam and Shaini out.
Perfect. Bye.
Bye.
This episode was kindly supported by Ingenium, Canada's Museums of Science and Innovation. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes of Growing Together.